Hello. So I pulled down 2 videos I made yesterday, and I wanted to do a video on why. It's because I made a mistake. Because getting these timed with the Vacuum Advanced is definitely confusing, especially when you've never done it before. I've always worked with MSDs with just either locked out or initial and then mechanical advanced, limiting the advance. But this is a whole nother game, running with a Vacuum Advance. It adds things to it. So yesterday, I got this thing hot and good, and I was messing with it, and I definitely learned some things. I learned that it really likes to be around 41 degrees at idle with the Vacuum Advance hooked up. It likes that. The car felt good. The four-corner idle circuit, obviously the adjustments were very sensitive at that timing. I could easily manipulate the air-fuel ratio with those. You put the car in gear and it wanted to go. So that's one thing that I learned. Then I realized I shut it off and I went to start it, and it had a little bit of kickback there. I think that was around 20 degrees initial, I believe it was. So I backed it off just a couple degrees to about 18, and it stopped the kickback. So the car was about 38 degrees at idle. And it wasn't as nice. The 2 degrees were definitely noticeable. So that's one thing I learned there. Now the other things I learned was the vacuum pod seems to always give me 20 degrees. And it's right at idle. Right when you plug it in, it goes to 20 degrees. So I hooked the Mighty Vac up to it and learned you could adjust how quick it came in. And you seem to keep pumping on it and it would come up to like 16 and it would stop. But the way this works in practice and not theory is once you get vacuum on it, it goes right to 20. It doesn't, I don't know exactly if it just, that 10 inches of vacuum keeps building on it and it keeps pulling it slowly. Like, it goes right to 20 degrees advance. You could literally watch it by pop it off, put it on, and it would just add 20 degrees. So that's a known factor. The next known factor is that with 35 degrees total, like total timing for power, not with Vacuum Advance, this thing wants 35 degrees. That's what Indy heads want. So that's another known factor. 35 at power. Let's write that down. So with all those numbers together, 35 being my max, which will be there if the vacuum comes off under full throttle, and 20 with vacuum, I have 55 degrees total of everything. So those are the factors I have. Now this 55 degrees is actually kind of important, because if you look back, and maybe I'll insert a picture of the directions from Mopar Performance, not in my book that I was talking about, but there's a Mopar Performance pamphlet somewhere that lists stuff. I'll insert the picture. And it says RB engines maximum of 56 degrees total timing. So that is actually remarkably close to what they were talking about, which seems like a huge amount of timing. But I've seen it on this engine here. While free revving and watching how it goes, it climbed up probably to about, I hit like 53 or 54. My fluid damper stops reading at 50, but I know it was at probably 54, and I backed off. But I didn't hear any detonation. Now, back in the old days when I had an Ironhead 440 and I plugged in my Vacuum Advance and I didn't know really anything of what I was doing, man, that thing rattled like crazy instantly. So, and I just unplugged it. And I know that thing must have been way up there. So with this thing free revving at 55, nothing happens. That lends credence to the Mopar performance number of 56. So I could definitely see that if you're cruising down the highway and you just let off the fuel and you close everything, it'd probably shoot that up to 55 or so and not have a problem, because the engine's just sitting there, like freewheeling basically. So the numbers I used yesterday, and I forgot that when I reduced my timing to 18 to make it start okay, then I still only had 10 degrees mechanical limited in the can. So that obviously would only give me 28 degrees total. And that wouldn't be enough for no vacuum full throttle. So I'm thinking, working with these numbers here, and if you're still watching this because of my rambling and my thought process, good for you. Because I just have to basically sit here by myself and run these numbers through my head and try to figure out where they stack and how they work. Okay? So I have another picture too of, I think it comes from FBO actually, or 4secondsflat.com or whatever. And they talk about cam timing at 50 and what your initial should be. And that has always been accurate for me, because this does not like to start cold. But if I put the timing at 24, right in the middle of where they say it should be for a cam at 251 at 50 is like 22 to 28 degrees. I put it at 24, this thing fires off pretty easily. Like really easily. So should I add that to another known, we'll put cold there, start. Should I add that to another known constant? Because at 18 degrees or 20 degrees the other day, cold, this did not want to start for shit. And I had to pedal it and pump it and work it. Where at 24, boom, it'll start right up and run good. So I'm thinking I might want to try to deploy my start retard and try to run 24 or 25 on the bottom. Start retard it, which goes away at 500 RPM once it fires basically. And then try to work with my numbers above that. I don't know. This is where I'm getting confused. I think this is where the spring rate chart for the advance curve is going to come in. And possibly where it likes 41 degrees-ish at idle, you can adjust the vacuum pod counterclockwise to decrease, counterclockwise to increase. I mentioned that in one of those videos, that the Mopar performance directions in the fire core are opposite. The distributor cans must be different. This one likes to decrease counterclockwise. So if I bump up my bottom timing number, I can counterclockwise decrease that and hit my 41 at idle. And if I minus 5 degrees off this, I'll get roughly maybe 19 to let it turn over, and once it catches, it'll pop right up and I'll be able to stay good at 24 and not have to pedal the shit out of it and flood it. So yeah, these are all, but this 24 number for initial works perfectly for my 10 degrees I have in there right now of mechanical advance to get me roughly 35 total. I would just have to probably tailor the spring curve to see how that plays out at my cruise. So yeah, this has been a long video and just all words. But if you can understand how these things are confusing, and trying to lay it out is a task when you're not working with stock parts. You know, and you obviously don't want to hurt anything, but you have to get a theoretical starting point, right? You have to start somewhere and then start testing and see if you run into detonation. So, all right, we're made it to about 10 minutes. I hope this made sense to you. And you can see where I was. I apologize for posting shit yesterday that wasn't quite accurate. That's why I took those down. And sometimes when you get in the middle of just running around with a chicken with your head cut off, trying to figure shit out, I made a couple mistakes there. But here we are, trying to figure with known constants. Later.